The second part of the show is where we're getting really out of our depth. We're branching out a little bit, and we're going to make recommendations to you folks. And this is our 10 gifts for the birder in your life suggestions. Okay. We got a couple of messages coming up to the Christmas period that I just didn't have a chance to reply to about, I want to kind of get into birding. I want to kind of up my game in regards to bird watching, and how do I go about that? Have you any recommendations on gear, so on and so forth? Or how do I go about getting into the pastime? Just general questions like that. And we're going to address those types of things in a future video. Don't think we're ignoring you. It's very, very hard to answer what is quite a difficult question in a flippant or throwaway manner. And that's essentially what we're going to approach these 10 suggestions. Or that's essentially how we're going to approach these 10 suggestions. Okay. So we split it up: cheap and expensive. Okay, so 5 kind of dear presents for the birder in your life, and 5 stocking fillers, or 5 cheap enough presents that we would recommend. So we'll get down and dirty first and do the cheap things, will we? What do you think?
On a budget. Don't say cheap.
On a budget.
On a budget, yeah.
It's like your first girlfriend, lads. She wasn't cheap. You were just on a budget. Okay, so your cheap-ish recommendations. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do the down and dirty ones. That's me. And the first thing I'll recommend is a spud. And I know what you're thinking. Typical Irish lad loves a spud. Quite true, but this is a different type of spud. This is a microfiber cloth. Okay. And it's by a company called Spuds with a Z at the end. And what you do with your microfiber cloth is you stuff it back up inside this kind of neoprene little sock that keeps it waterproof and dry. And you attach this to your bin's harness or your bin strap. And you have it always on you, no matter hail, rain, or snow. You have something to clean your optics with in the field at all times. And I really, really recommend it, because I can't say enough, I can't say how many times I've actually had to resort to cleaning my bins with my t-shirt or in my sleeve. So I really recommend this, folks. It's about £7. It's not going to break the bank.
Especially if you're on a budget.
or just cheap.
Boy, Brian, criticize the poor. Okay. Option number 2 is these pair of Solignac mittens. They come from Decathlon. For those of you unfamiliar with Decathlon, they're essentially a big budget retailer of outdoor gear. I believe these are hunting mittens, and they're windproof, they're water resistant. But what I like about them is you get your fingers out of them. Okay. So you have the dexterity to use your binoculars, your optical equipment, or scroll your phone if you're Brian McCluskey.
But would your fingers not get cold then, John?
Oh, wait, Brian, there's more. Okay, so these ensure optimal temperature of your digits, but still maintain functionality. They're £7. If you buy them for your birding pal or your birding friend, they'll appreciate them and they'll use them. You can't go wrong for under a tenner, really. So they're very, very good.
They look like boxing gloves, John.
They do indeed. They're kind of like
that wall there, John, to see it didn't work.
Come on, give us an out.
No, I can't. I'm not allowed to fight in the internet anymore, lads. So this is my third suggestion for your budget-friendly gift option, and that is a book by longtime friend of the show, Mr. Eric Dempsey and Michael O'Cleary, and that's Finding Birds in Ireland. Peter, have you got yours?
Peter, where's your one?
Scramble.
I do have one.
Yeah, I know you do.
Yeah.
So for those of you who haven't seen the episode that we did with Eric, I'd highly recommend you check that out. But in that, we kind of discuss this in somewhat good depth. And I actually think I liken this to Eric's legacy to birding. This is fantastic if you're an Irish birder and you're just starting out and you want to kind of familiarize yourself with the different types of places you can go and the different types of species that you can expect to see in different areas in Ireland. There's nothing else that compares to this. Great option and a gift that I'd love to get.
He has another great book, John. Just as a general read, is my favorite book of his is Don't Die in Autumn. It's a memoir of his birding
Brilliant read, yeah.
trips. It's a fantastic read.
Yeah.
Or the that was my first proper book. I remember, I think it was published in 2010, so I was probably about 12. But I remember up to that point, if I ever went into like a bookshop, the one family, like the three families that I always judged how good a book was if they had shearwaters, petrels, and skuas. I think if they had the four skuas, I'd be mad to get it, because you know that you were like, if it had longtail and palm skua, you knew you were under a good book. And I remember when I saw the cover of that book there with the Corey shear, it's the only book that I have that I actually fill my list in, like, into the book, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely worthwhile getting, I think.
Yeah, we can't
Really
speak enough. We can't recommend Eric's books highly enough. But my third suggestion for budget-friendly option is Finding Birds in Ireland. The price is less than €20, which is a steal. It's a bargain.
Yeah.
Gonna go up a little bit in terms of price.
John, just one more. Sorry, I'd like to recommend is a membership to Birdwatch Ireland. I think it's only
Absolutely, yeah.
It's only 40 odd euros.
Yeah.
You get the quarterly magazine, and also for particularly people taking up the hobby, you have the option of joining the local branches, and they bring people out every month to different areas. So that's a really good way to introduce people to birding. And also a lot of that money goes back to helping conserve birds in Ireland. So it's well worth 40 quid.
Yeah, definitely. That was actually my fourth suggestion, Peter. And it's one of two of the budget-friendly options that are over 35 to 40 quid. Still fairly budget-friendly. The other slightly more expensive option at about €40 is a binocular harness. I was turned on to these by a guy called Micheál Coiming in Waterford. He was saying that you need to get yourself a harness, lad. They're the coolest thing out there. And I didn't believe him. I was mocking him, and we were joking around. And very, very nice to let me try on his binocular harness. He has nice binoculars. Had a look through those. They were fantastic as well. But the harness is what shocked me. It will really, really revolutionize your time in the field. I'm like a pack mule. I can carry weight in the field, no problem. But this just makes you forget that you're actually wearing binoculars. It's crazy, and they're always just perfectly positioned right here. There's no strain. There's no chafing on the back of the neck. No awkward tan lines you have to explain. They're really, really, really good, folks. You don't have to go with a branded one like Swarovski. There are loads of different companies making cheaper alternatives than that. You can get them for under €25, and they make a long, long day in the field much more palatable. Great option for you at about the 20 quid mark as well. That's our 5 suggestions. So you've got the Spuds, microfiber cloth, the Mittens, the Finding Birds in Ireland, the harness, the Birdwatch Ireland membership, and I think you can get all of those things for under €100 if you really want to treat that person. So you can think about that. I want to make a special mention of a book that you guys turned me on to, which is Jewel Hunter by Chris Goody. I'm only on page, what am I on?
3.
3.5. No, I'm on page 156. I've been busy, but when I started to read it, I couldn't put it down. I just had to step away from it. I was forced to, because I had to get some stuff in before the end of the year. But this is a really, really interesting read. I'm going to pass it on to the lads afterwards. And if you want to go for that 6th option, this is your bonus option, recommended by you guys, some of you guys, the Jewel Hunter by Chris Goody. Great book.
John, what happens on page 17?
Chris is in the forest, and he meets this small, kind of skimpy, sort of pygmy-looking fellow with a huge mouth and a terrible fringe, and he's running about saying, "Well, do you know where the pitters are? Hey, do you? Do you know where they are? Hey?"
Was he like Gollum? Was he like Gollum with a friend?
Yeah. He was like, Chris, I'm after burning the clutch out of my car and I can't get it up the hill, but I want to you wouldn't give me that direction there, Chris, would you? Drop a pin. Would you drop a pin there, Chris, would you? That's what happens.
regret asking that.
Yeah, but look, that story might stretch out to page 18 or 19, but that's where it starts. That's a gist. Like, sorry, I couldn't be more specific. So from there, we're going to transition smoothly over to our more expensive suggestions. Okay, so these are 5 suggestions that we have that are a little bit more expensive. They're not as budget friendly. They're a little bit more of a significant purchase. So if you really like that burger in your life, or you just want to treat yourself, these are some things that we would recommend to you. So the first one is a book that Brian is going to tell us a little bit about.
It's quite an expensive book, but it's the Handbook of the Western Palearctic, or of Passerines. It's a 2-volume series.
Oh, Brian, I can see it just fits into your hand nice and neatly there, the handbook.
Yeah.
It's a gigantic book, in fairness. It's by
Brian, is that not the telephone book of the Birds of the Western Palearctic now?
The Yellow Pages. It's by Hadaram Shirahai and Lars Svensson.
That first man he's not gonna realize he wrote that book going on that pronunciation. He's not gonna have a clue
That's
who
a
you're
nail.
talking about.
That's a nail.
He'll not have a clue who you're talking about.
But no, in fairness, it's on Passerines. It's the best book to have, in my opinion. I think if it's the only book you kind of need. It just has everything. It is like 3 or 4 pages on most species, and then things like yellow wags and things like that with subspecies and lesser white throats and things like that. There's so many pages on it.
It's very in depth, isn't it?
It really, really in depth. And then it's also is like for ringers and things like that, like the measurements and then
did you say for stringers?
For ringers.
Oh, ringers.
It also has like their opinion on splits and things like that. So like potential splits, like Eastern Subalp and things like that. So it's probably my favorite book. In terms
it covers a lot of ground.
You got
it does, yeah.
Got a price on that? Got a price on that?
I think I paid like I was about 150 probably.
Yeah. Over 150.
If not more, I can't remember exactly. Yeah, I think it was probably
it's a significant price, but you have to remember 2 things. Packed with information, and it's a double volume as well. You know, there's 2 volumes.
It's kind of a bit of a coffee table book, isn't it? Some lovely pictures.
So. Yeah, the pictures in it are insane, like really, really good.
And as you know, as Brian has evidence, you don't need to be able to read to enjoy it. There are plenty of
exactly. Just look at the pictures.
Look at the pictures for a while. Okay, so option 2 is one of my suggestions, and that is a tripod head. I'm going to give you the one that I use, which is a Manfrotto MVH502AH. Okay, just rolls off the tongue. That's some fantastic branding and product naming there, Manfrotto, whatever you want to call it. But the reason I would suggest that is I often see
Manfrotto.
But yeah, so the reason I'd recommend a tripod head is that I've seen so many lads that they go out and they break the bank on fantastic, really expensive optics, and then they prop them up on a matchstick and hope for the best. So this increases stability of. I have a fairly average Manfrotto tripod, but this increases the stability of it when you're doing things like sea watching, all those different things, and it's fantastic for filming as well. And as well as that, it is really, really reasonable. That looks quite an expensive piece of kit, and you can get it for the same price as Brian's book. It's on sale at the moment on Uttings.co.uk for 149 quid. So that is a steal, in my opinion. Low maintenance. It's been out in all the elements. Nothing goes wrong. It's bomb-proof. Recommend that piece of kit.
John, you'd swear you were doing an advertisement there. On audience.co.uk.
No, I know. That's where I got it, and I got it because they were the cheapest and they're fantastic customer service.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And Larry in the shop will look after you if you tell him we sent you. There is nobody there called Larry. I made that completely up. Okay, joke. Our third suggestion for a slightly more expensive gift is the Vortex Diamondback HD 10x50 binoculars, okay? And that kind of harks back to what I said earlier about people asking us how to get into bird watching. And the first thing that you really, really need is, well, arguably a set of optics. You could say a reference book or a guidebook, but a set of optics, even cheaper than that, will really open up birds, even if it's just your garden birds, to you, and make it a lot more interesting, a lot more engaging. I've recommended the Vortex Diamondback HDs because they are really, for that price, which is about £250. I know it's not the cheapest, but for that price, they are fantastic quality. Optically, but also in terms of the warranty that they offer. It's a no quibble lifetime warranty, and you can buy a pair of these binoculars, take them outside the shop, hammer in the nail with them, bring them back in, and they'll repair them and replace them for you, no questions asked. And they rival the bigger companies in terms of their image quality. Could only recommend them. Fantastic brand to get started with, and for a relatively low investment when you compare them to the likes of the Swaros, you can get into birding, and you can do almost as much as the bigger boys as well. So that's one of the things we discussed, a nice affordable way to get into birding for everybody. And I think that was Peter decided to recommend a pair of binoculars, and then I have a bit of experience with Vortex, so that's why we're going with those. We're not endorsing, we're not affiliated with Vortex. This is not paid promotion, any of those things. I just happen to like
2 in the hand at checkout.
Yeah, I just like those.
Use your promo code.
Yeah. And then
I think when you're talking about binoculars and optics, you know, if you're taking it up seriously as a hobby, you're going to be spending a lot of time looking through the binoculars, and you need good quality glass. It makes a huge difference. And really, with binoculars, you're paying for the lenses. That's what you're paying for. It's like a good camera. And you might think €250 or pounds a lot of money, but it makes a huge difference to someone who's bird watching that the quality of the optics are good.
Really so. As well as that, for example, if you're into your wildlife observation and not just your bird watching, you want something that will do it all. These will do that too. Obviously, again, so will the Swarovskis and the Zeiss and the Leica. They'll probably do it better. Definitely do it better. But in terms of starting point, you can't go wrong with the Vortex Diamondback 10x50s, and they're only £250. Our final suggestion is in relation to footwear, okay? And we all have a divergence of opinion here, all right? But one thing that birders do is typically spend long hours in the field on their feet, trudging through mud, sludge, and muck, and all those fantastic other things. Now, Peter and I wanted to recommend Wellington Boots. Brian suggests a stiletto heel. He thinks that just accentuates the calf and gives you the lift that you need in the midday. So, you know, we all recommend wellies, but we diverge a little bit in the brand that we would recommend. If you're going to be buying a pair of good quality wellies, you're going to be paying over €120 anyway. But we're each going to talk about our favorite wellies. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Peter, go.
So I got these Dunlops recently, about 3 or 4 months ago, and called Snug Boot. So they've got kind of a neoprene top, so they're really comfortable. Boots really good quality, really comfortable. It's actually in warm weather. They're not too, you don't get too hot. They're quite breathable, and in the winter they're lovely and snug. In fact, I prefer. I spent maybe 8 or 10 hours walking around these in Belmullet recently, and they're more comfortable than a pair of walking boots, or at least as comfortable and warmer. Now, the only problem with them is with being neoprene, sometimes they're prone to getting nicked and torn, so you have to be careful with that. I have a small hole here, so you just have to be careful with that. That's the only drawback I'd have, but really comfortable boots. I'd recommend them. And I think about 110 or 120 euros, as John was suggesting.
Brian.
Yeah, I got probably like a year and a half ago. I got a pair of Hunter. I think they're that's too close, isn't it? Hunter Balmorals.
Balmorals, no less.
Balmorals, yeah. I think I got them. They were on sale, and they were like 95, I think, in a pet shop in Dundalk. And I was gonna get them, and then I talked it over with John, and John said, "You'd be a fool to do it." So I did. So I went and I got them, and I walk around, like, even if I'm just doing like normal birding, I just wear them because I think they're more comfortable than runners, and you're not afraid of if you have to walk through a field or anything like that. You're not afraid of getting soaked. There's a
Brian,
3 mil.
the top half of them, they're not neoprene, so they're just like the welly boot.
No,
the
there's a
entire way
3 mil layer of neoprene inside it.
up. Okay.
Let me see. I don't know if this will focus.
Good job.
Yeah.
Just there,
So,
like.
do you find they're sweaty or?
No, not at all. Not at all. No. And there's an adjustable thing on the side, so you can like if it is too warm or whatever, you can just loosen it a bit or whatever. I love them. I have to say, I think they're class. But
yeah.
The only thing that I only have them about a year and maybe 3 or 4 months. So if they do me 10 years, fair enough. But if they only last, because I saw a lot of people were saying that they don't last too long. But some people were saying they only lasted like weeks, but I haven't had that issue at all. I think that's probably the same with everything. Like if you could just get a bad pair, but I swear by them so far. So
yeah, they are extremely popular with 10-year-old girls who like horse riding as well.
Brian, is that the same shop you got your jodhpurs in?
My what?
Your jodhpurs.
My jodhpurs? I have no idea what that is.
They're those tight riding trousers you wear with the boots.
Peter, you're doing it wrong, mate. I take my trousers off. The Wellington boots that I would recommend are exactly the same as Peter's, except they don't leak. Oh, I went there.
John, you know I'm not even messing. 2 weeks ago, you had to go back and get a new pair of them.
Yeah, no. 2 weeks ago, I had to leave the dun. In all honesty, as you say, I may have just got a bad pair, but I bought the same. I went off Peter's recommendation, bought the same pair of Wellingtons as his, and they lasted me about a fortnight, folks, to be honest. Might have just got a bad pair. I don't know. But I wore them 2 or 3 days around Tecumseh, not excessively, and then myself and Brian were out sea watching off Louth and just started to get a wet foot above the ankle, not just pretty much a little bit above the seam. So I was disgusted with that. I was disappointed. I have bad luck with Wellingtons. But
so our day's burden was abandoned while you stormed off to the shop to return
essentially, where I huffed my way into an aggregate supply store and slammed a pair of wellies in the thing and says, "My feet are wet." But she's like, "Did you buy them there?" Yes, I did. Nevertheless, so what I'd recommend instead is the muck boot, and that's the muck boot wetland. Similar price again, but for my money, I think they're going to be a little bit better because the rubber itself comes up a little bit higher. So I'm going to assume that it's going to take, I suppose, the pressure off the neoprene, which is going to be, it's not going to be as kind of worn by the ankle, is what I'm going to assume. Because I can't think of anything else that went wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's a little bit, I think the neoprene is a wee bit lower down on those. And I think
you're right. Yeah.
That's where my ankle was moving, maybe stressed the seam or something. I don't know. But I go with the
what are you doing with that welly?
Giving it a good sniff, Brian.
That a boy. Nice of Jared to lend you those, Peter. Anyway, what does Jer swear by in terms of wellies? What's the Aggiles? They're a great pair of wellies.
He used to have muck boots up to a couple of years ago.
I think.
Does he still have muck boots?
I think he has both. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Because he loves his comfort.
He loves his comfort.
He loves his comfort.
I will say,
pretty lattes.
I will say, I personally didn't like. I tried on Hunters as well. I didn't like them. I found them a bit restricting in the calf. But my calves are so big they can be called bullocks, so it doesn't matter. Your mileage may vary on that one. I thought Peter's Dunlop pair of wellies were, as he said, incredibly comfortable. Marginally more comfortable in the muck boot, to be fair. But I think the muck boot will be just a little bit more durable. So I'm willing to go with them. They're still a very, very comfortable boot. The point we're trying to make here is, folks, the birder in your life will probably like a few pounds spent on a decent pair of wellies.
Yeah, like they're, bins are important, but wellies, like footwear, decent footwear when you're
There's
outdoors.
nothing
Really,
worse
really
than being out in
important.
winter and being standing in a field for hours and your toes numb with the cold. Like,
very true.
So.
So by way of a summary, folks, our recommendations: 5 cheap products that we're recommending were the Spud, second was the gloves, third was the harness, fourth and fifth were the books that we mentioned. Also the Birdwatch Ireland membership, which you're also helping out a very, very worthy charity.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a bit of financial strife at present. We recommend that one. Underline, exclamation point. Then the expensive gifts that we would suggest would be the tripod head, the handbook to the birds of the Western Palearctic, Vortex Diamondback HD binoculars, and then the Wellington boots as well. Was that 4 or 5? We had only 4 expensive ones.
John, get the fingers out. Come on.
We had only 4 expensive gifts. Had we another one to mention?
Can't remember one.
Those are our top 9 recommendations. Top 9 recommendations for gifts for the birder in your life, folks.